Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The day started like any other. The sun filtered through the blinds, casting a soft glow over our bedroom. Candy was already downstairs, the smell of fresh coffee wafting through the house. I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing my eyes and trying to shake off the last remnants of sleep. Little did I know, this morning would change my life forever. I had no reason to suspect anything. Candy and I had been married for 8 years, and while things hadn't been as exciting as they were in the beginning, I always believed we were solid. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but cheating? It hadn't even crossed my mind. It all started when I decided to use her laptop. My computer had crashed the night before, and I had a few work emails to send out. Candy never minded when I borrowed her things, and I didn't think twice about opening her laptop. The screen lit up, and immediately, her browser was there, still open to the last page she'd visited. At first, it seemed like any other site, some forum or message board. But then I saw the name, Lonely Hearts Club. I paused, staring at the words. Something about it made my gut twist, but I brushed it off. Curiosity getting the best of me, I clicked on the tab. The website's landing page was innocent enough, a forum for people to connect with others. The tagline, for those searching for something more, felt like a punch in the chest. A small voice inside me told me to close it, but my fingers had a mind of their own. I clicked on the chat section, and that's when my world came crashing down. There, under the username Sweet Candy, was my wife. The timestamp showed she'd been active just last night, while I was upstairs, probably falling asleep. My breath caught in my throat as I read through the messages. One thread stood out more than the others. It was with someone who went by my boy. The words on the screen blurred as my vision narrowed. Sweet Candy, you always make me feel so special. Love you, my boy. I blinked, hoping it was a mistake, a joke, anything but what it clearly was. I scrolled up, feeling my heart pound harder with every line. My boy, when can I see you again? Last night was amazing. Sweet Candy, soon. We'll make it happen. The words were casual, familiar. As if they had shared countless nights together. My hands shook as I gripped the edge of the desk, a strange combination of disbelief and rage building inside me. Candy, my wife, was cheating on me. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. This was ongoing. I could hear her downstairs, humming softly as she clinked dishes together. It felt surreal. How could she act so normal after betraying me like this? How long had this been going on? Who was my boy? Did I know him? A million questions flooded my mind, each one more painful than the last. I slammed the laptop shut, my mind racing. I knew I had to confront her, but the fury bubbling inside me wouldn't let me think straight. I needed a plan, something that would hit her as hard as she had hit me. She had destroyed the trust between us, shattered our marriage like it was nothing. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. I stormed down the stairs, forcing a calmness I didn't feel. Candy was at the kitchen counter, smiling as she poured herself a cup of coffee. Morning, babe, she said without a hint of guilt or remorse. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms as I struggled to keep my voice steady. I used your laptop this morning, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. She turned, her smile faltering slightly. Oh. Did it work all right? I stared at her, my eyes burning into hers. I saw the Lonely Hearts Club site. Her face went pale. The cup slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor. She didn't even try to deny it. She just stood there, frozen, her mouth slightly open as if she couldn't find the words. And that silence, that moment of hesitation, told me everything I needed to know. What is it, Candy? I asked, my voice low, barely controlled. Are you lonely? Is that it? You needed someone else to make you feel special? She took a step back, her hands trembling. I can explain, she stammered, but the words felt hollow. There was no explanation for this. I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. Explain? Explain what? How long, Candy? How long have you been sneaking behind my back? Tears welled up in her eyes, but they only fueled my anger. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I didn't mean for. I cut her off, slamming my fist down on the counter. But it did. You cheated on me, Candy. While I was here, loving you, trusting you, you were out with him, whoever the hell he is. She crumpled into a chair, her head in her hands, sobbing. But I couldn't feel sympathy for her. Not anymore. My mind was already working, forming a plan, a way to make her pay for what she had done. I wasn't just going to leave her. No, that was too easy. I was going to ruin her life the way she had ruined mine. She thought she could walk away from this, that she could keep her little secret hidden. But she was wrong. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her there in tears. I needed space, time to think. But one thing was clear, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not this time. As I stepped outside, the cool morning air hit me, and with it, a sense of clarity. I knew exactly what I was going to do. And when I was done, Candy would regret ever crossing me. This was just the beginning. The beginning of her downfall. The cold air outside did little to cool the storm raging inside me. My thoughts were a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and the need for retribution. Candy's sobbing from the kitchen still echoed in my ears, but I couldn't bring myself to care. She'd done this to us, destroyed everything we'd built together. I paced around the yard, my fists clenched, trying to make sense of it all. How long had she been lying? How many times had she gone to that site, pretending to be the loving wife while sneaking around with my boy? I wasn't just going to let this go. Candy didn't get to play the victim in this. I wasn't going to be the man who stood by, silently accepting his wife's betrayal. No, I was going to make her feel the weight of every single lie, every night she spent with him instead of me. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my fingers shaking as I dialed the number. Jared. My best friend. He needed to know. Yo, what's up, man? Jared's voice was casual, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Jared, my voice came out hoarse, barely controlled. I need you to come over. There was a pause on the other end, the light-hearted tone in Jared's voice vanishing. What's wrong? You sound off. It's Candy, I said, my jaw tightening. She's been cheating on me. I found out everything. Jared cursed under his breath. I'm on my way. I hung up, barely able to process the conversation. Jared had been there since the beginning, through the highs and lows of our marriage. He knew how much I loved Candy, or at least, how much I had loved her before everything shattered this morning. As I waited for him, I leaned against the fence, replaying the morning's events in my head. Candy's tears, her pathetic excuses, the way she crumbled when I confronted her. Good. She should feel ashamed. She should be terrified, because this was far from over. The sound of tires crunching on the gravel pulled me from my thoughts. Jared's car pulled into the driveway, and I met him halfway. He got out, his face grim as he approached me. What the hell happened? He asked, his eyes searching mine for answers. I handed him Candy's laptop, already open to the forum. I didn't have the energy to explain, I needed him to see it for himself. Jared scrolled through the messages, his expression darkening with each line he read. Jesus, man, he muttered, shaking his head. I can't believe this. Neither can I said, my voice low and hard. I thought we were solid, Jared. I never saw this coming. He closed the laptop and handed it back to me, his face set in a frown. What are you gonna do? I didn't hesitate. I'm going to ruin her. She thinks she can just cry and beg for forgiveness, but I'm not letting her get away with it. She destroyed everything, and I'm going to make her regret it. Jared looked at me for a moment, his brow furrowing. You sure you want to go down that road? I mean, revenge, it's messy, man. I met his gaze, unflinching. She's been messing around with some guy behind my back for God knows how long. I'm not just walking away from that. Jared sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right. I get it. What's the plan? I smirked, a dark satisfaction rising in my chest. First, I'm going to hit her where it hurts. She loves her reputation, loves being the perfect wife in front of her friends. Let's see how she handles it when everyone knows what she's really been up to. I pulled out my phone and opened our group chat with some of our closest friends. A lot of them had known Candy for years, and she prided herself on being the perfect partner. Not anymore. I typed out the message, my fingers moving quickly over the screen. Me, hey guys, just found out Candy's been cheating on me. Thought you should all know the truth about the perfect marriage she's been bragging about. Check out this forum she's been on. I attached a screenshot of her chat with my boy and hit send. Jared looked over my shoulder, whistling softly. Damn, man. You're not holding back. I shrugged. Why should I? She didn't care when she was sneaking around behind my back. Within seconds, my phone started blowing up with responses. Shocked messages, people asking if I was serious, others expressing disbelief. I didn't bother responding. The damage was done. Next, I said, turning to Jared, I want to find out who this my boy is. Jared raised an eyebrow. You really want to track him down? I nodded, the rage in me still simmering just below the surface. I need to know who she's been betraying me with. And when I find him, I'll make sure he regrets ever touching her. Jared sighed but nodded. All right, I'll help you. But let's be smart about this, okay? No doing anything that'll land you in trouble. I didn't respond. My mind was already racing, formulating my next move. Candy thought she could hide her betrayal behind a screen, but I was about to pull everything into the light. She was going to see what it felt like to lose everything. Just then, the front door creaked open, and Candy appeared on the porch, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked between me and Jared, her face full of regret and panic. Please, let's talk about this, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I'm sorry, I really am. I never meant for it to go this far. I turned to face her, my expression cold. You're only sorry because you got caught, Candy. If I hadn't found those messages, you'd still be sneaking around behind my back. Her lip trembled, and she stepped forward, but I held up a hand to stop her. We're done. And if you think you're walking away from this unscathed, you're wrong. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she crumpled against the doorframe. Jared shifted awkwardly beside me, but I didn't care. The sight of her in pain didn't bring me any comfort, it just confirmed that she was getting what she deserved. I'll be in touch about the divorce, I said, turning my back on her. But until then, don't even think about coming near me. With that, I walked away, Jared at my side. Candy's sobs faded into the background as we left her standing on the porch, her world starting to crumble just like she had done to mine. And this was just the beginning. The real revenge was still to come. The days following my confrontation with Candy were a blur. Her texts and voicemails flooded my phone, each more desperate than the last. She pleaded for forgiveness, begged for another chance, but I was done. The anger still burned inside me, and the more she tried to reach out, the more determined I became to make her suffer for what she had done. Jared had been by my side through it all, helping me strategize my next move. We sat in his living room one evening, the glow of the television casting shadows on the walls. But the show playing on the screen was the last thing on my mind. Have you found anything on him yet? I asked, leaning forward on the couch. Jared nodded, setting his beer down. I think I've got something. I did a reverse search on his username from that chat room, my boy, and found a few profiles that match. One of them has a photo. He pulled out his phone and handed it to me, the image already on the screen. My heart pounded as I stared at the face. The man looked younger than I expected, late 20s, maybe. Clean cut, dark hair, the kind of guy you wouldn't think twice about passing on the street. And here he was, the one my wife had been sneaking around with. I felt my fists clench as rage pulsed through me again. Who is he? I asked, my voice tight. His name's Kyle, Jared said. Lives a few miles from here. Works at some tech company downtown. Nothing flashy, but clearly enough to impress Candy. Kyle. The name alone made my blood boil. This guy thought he could waltz into my life and take my wife. He had no idea what was coming. I want to confront him, I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. Jared looked at me, frowning. Confront him how? I want to look him in the eye and see what kind of man sneaks around with another guy's wife. I want him to feel as helpless as I've felt. Jared shook his head. Look, I get it. I do. But you need to be careful. This kind of thing can escalate fast. You don't want to do something you'll regret. I stood up, pacing around the room. I don't care, Jared. I'm not going to just sit around while this guy gets away with everything. I need to do something. He sighed, leaning back against the couch. Fine. But let's be smart about this. We'll track him down, but no flying off the handle. You want revenge, right? Let's make sure it's the kind of revenge that hits where it really hurts. The plan started to take shape in my mind. Confronting Kyle was only the beginning. I wanted to unravel every part of the life he thought he was building, just like he had done to mine. It wasn't hard to track Kyle down. Jared had pulled up his work schedule, and after a few days of following him, I knew his routine. He worked late, usually leaving his office around 8 p.m., stopping by the same coffee shop every evening before heading home. Tonight, I was waiting for him. I parked my car across the street from the coffee shop, watching as people came and went. I checked the time. 7:45 p.m. He'd be here any minute. Sure enough, a few minutes later, I saw him, Kyle, walking out of his office, casually dressed, unaware that his life was about to take a sharp turn. He stepped inside the shop, ordering his usual drink. I could feel my pulse quicken as I got out of the car and walked towards the entrance. The door jingled as I stepped inside, the smell of coffee and baked goods filling the air. Kyle hadn't noticed me yet. He was standing at the counter, scrolling through his phone. I walked up behind him, close enough to feel the tension rise in my chest. Kyle, I said, my voice steady but cold. He turned, his face scrunching in confusion. Do I know you? You should, I said, my jaw tightening. I'm the guy whose wife you've been screwing. His eyes widened, the color draining from his face. He took a small step back, his mouth opening as if to speak, but no words came out. I could see the fear in his eyes, the realization that he was caught. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered, clearly trying to think of a way out. Cut the crap, I snapped. I've seen the messages. I've seen everything. You've been sneaking around with Candy, acting like I wouldn't find out. He glanced around the coffee shop, as if hoping someone would intervene, but no one paid attention. We were just two men, standing in the corner. To everyone else, it looked like an ordinary conversation. I didn't know she was married, Kyle muttered, his hands shaking. She never said anything. She never said anything. I cut him off, stepping closer. That's your excuse. You didn't know. So what, if she wasn't married, this would be fine. Kyle swallowed hard, his eyes darting toward the door. Look, man, I'm sorry. I didn't. You didn't think, I hissed, my voice low. But you're going to start thinking now. You thought this was some game? That you could just sneak around with my wife and I wouldn't find out? He tried to say something, but I wasn't finished. You're going to pay for this, Kyle. You've messed with the wrong guy, and I promise you, I'm going to make sure your life is a living hell. I watched as his expression changed from fear to panic. His eyes darted back to the counter where his coffee sat, but I grabbed his arm, holding him in place. You're going to stay away from Candy. You're going to disappear. If I hear you've even texted her, I'll make sure you regret it. I swear, he choked out, his voice trembling. I'll stay away. I didn't know. I'll never contact her again. Please, just leave me alone. I let go of his arm, stepping back. You'll do more than that. You'll forget she ever existed. And if I even think you're still around, I'll make sure this gets a lot worse. Kyle nodded frantically, backing away from me as he grabbed his coffee and nearly stumbled out of the shop. I watched him go, my hands still trembling with rage. This was just the beginning of his suffering. He wasn't the only one who would pay. Candy was next. I walked back to my car, my head spinning with ideas. She had hurt me, destroyed our marriage. But I wasn't just going to walk away from her betrayal. She would regret every lie, every night she spent with Kyle. And when I was done, she wouldn't have anything left. The day of reckoning arrived faster than I anticipated. Every piece of the plan I had been working on for weeks was now falling into place. I hadn't slept well since I confronted Kyle, and every night I lay awake, thinking of how I would make Candy and Kyle pay for their betrayal. I didn't just want to hurt them, I wanted to ruin their lives the way they had ruined mine. The air outside was crisp, the early signs of fall beginning to creep in. As I stood in front of my house, watching Candy through the window as she went about her usual routine, a deep sense of satisfaction welled up inside me. She had no idea what was coming. This was the calm before the storm, and I was the one holding the thunder. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out to see a message from Jared, everything set. Are you sure about this? I typed a quick response, it's too late to stop now. Later that evening, I walked through the front door, feigning normalcy. Candy was in the kitchen, her back to me as she stirred something on the stove. She hadn't said much in the last few days, and the tension between us had been unbearable. But tonight, everything would change. Hey, I said, my voice casual as I hung my coat up. How was your day? She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes wary. It was fine. Yours? Busy. I've been thinking we should talk, though, I said, walking toward her, keeping my tone light. You know, clear the air. Her hands faltered on the spoon, but she nodded. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I watched as she served dinner, her movements stiff and nervous. She set the plates down on the table, and we sat across from each other. The silence was thick, both of us knowing that the conversation we were about to have would determine the rest of our lives. So, she started, her voice trembling. I've been thinking about what happened. I want to make things right. I know I messed up. Messed up? I interrupted, my voice dangerously low. That's one way of putting it. She looked down at her plate, guilt written all over her face. I don't know what else to say. I was lost. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to hurt me. I echoed, incredulous. You didn't mean to hurt me when you were sneaking around with him? When you were telling him you loved him? Her eyes filled with tears. I was confused. I didn't know how to stop. I made a mistake, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix it. I leaned back in my chair, staring at her with cold detachment. It's too late for that, Candy. Her lip trembled as she stared back at me. What do you mean? I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope, tossing it onto the table between us. She glanced at it, her confusion growing as she hesitated to pick it up. "Go ahead. Open it," I said, my voice flat. With shaking hands, she tore open the envelope. Inside was a stack of photos I had taken of Kyle and her, laughing, holding hands, sneaking off together like teenagers. I had followed them for weeks, documenting every moment of their affair. Her eyes widened as she flipped through the pictures, her face draining of color. "How did you?" "I've been watching you, Candy. I've known for weeks. And while you were busy trying to cover your tracks, I was busy making sure I had everything I needed." She looked up at me, panic rising in her voice. "What are you going to do with these?" I smirked, leaning forward. "I already sent copies to everyone, your family, your friends, your boss. They all know who you really are now." Her face crumbled as the realization hit her. "No. No, you didn't." "I did. You see, I don't just want you to feel bad, Candy. I want you to lose everything. Your reputation, your career, your life, everything you've worked so hard to build. It's all coming down because of you." She collapsed into the chair, sobbing uncontrollably. But her tears did nothing for me. I had no sympathy left. "And that's not all," I continued, my voice cold as ice. "Kyle's been fired. I made sure his employer knew about the extracurricular activities he's been engaging in. His life is about to fall apart just like yours." Candy looked up at me, her face twisted with horror. "Why are you doing this?" I said I was sorry. "Sorry doesn't fix anything," I snapped, slamming my fist on the table. "You destroyed our marriage. You made a mockery of everything we had. I'm just returning the favor." The silence that followed was deafening. Candy's sobs had turned into shallow breaths as she stared at me, completely broken. But I wasn't finished. "Pack your things," I said, standing up. "I want you out of this house by tomorrow." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't care," I said coldly. "Find a hotel. Go stay with one of your friends, if you have any left. But you're not staying here." She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly, defeated. "Okay." As she shuffled toward the bedroom, I sat back down at the table, my heart pounding. The thrill of retribution still coursed through me, but there was an emptiness beneath it that I couldn't ignore. I had won, but at what cost? The next morning, I woke up to find Candy's things gone. The house felt eerily quiet without her presence, but it was a silence I welcomed. I walked through the empty rooms, my mind racing with the events of the past few weeks. I had done what I set out to do, destroyed her life, shattered Kyle's. But the satisfaction I had anticipated wasn't there. As I stood by the window, looking out at the street, my phone buzzed with a notification. A message from Jared. "I just heard about Kyle. He took his own life last night. Are you okay?" I stared at the screen, the words not registering at first. Then, slowly, the weight of what had happened hit me like a freight train. Kyle was dead. And it was because of me. I sank into a chair, my heart racing as I tried to make sense of it. Had I pushed him too far? Was this my fault? Candy's betrayal had torn my world apart, but now, the revenge I had so carefully orchestrated had ended in tragedy. I had wanted to make them pay, but I hadn't expected it to go this far. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I opened it to find Candy standing there, her eyes swollen and red. "They told me about Kyle," she whispered, her voice hollow. "How could you do this? How could you push him like that?" I stared at her, unable to find the words. The hate, the anger that had driven me for so long now felt hollow. I didn't mean for it to happen like this," I finally said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were empty. Candy shook her head, tears streaming down her face. You've destroyed everything. We can never come back from this. And just like that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the doorway. Everything was gone. All that was left was the empty shell of revenge, and the tragic consequences of a game I thought I could control.